in Iraq, we really started lightning warfare. We could clear 100 buildings in a night. There was nobody or nothing that could actually stop us from doing that. The American warfighter today is the finest warfighter in the world. As an Army guy, whether it's a unit or anybody, your nickname is going to be based off of something you screwed up. There was a guy that I worked with, his code name was Crapshoot. He gambled on a fart at training and lost, you know? So this is how where I worked, guys got their names. You know, the Navy, you know what I mean? You want to be Thor, God of Thunder, you're going to have to go to the Navy because they can name themselves. But Army guys, if you screw something up, it's probably going to stick. You know, log day, there's a day where you have to do, they call it log PT, where you get a telephone pole basically, and you're in a sawdust pit and they smoke you, or what they used to call smokings, which is just fitness till you can't go no more. And they're just trying to get guys to quit. And being from Ranger Battalion, I was already hip to this game. As a leader in Ranger Battalion, I had already done this game myself. So I knew there's a time limit to this. Your body can only handle so much, and then you just keep going anyway, and it'll be over in a few hours. So my team, you know, like on the first rep with the telephone pole, there's guys already like knees buckling, they're crying. So I was like, I'm just thinking to myself, you know, these guys are pussies, man. This isn't that hard. So they're doing stuff to cadence, right? And it's like 1, 2, 3, and then you count the number. So I just started yelling 0. I was like 0. And I did this enough for the cadres, like, come here. You know, so they made me go up in front of the class. They gave me my own 6-foot log, which I'd rather be on a log with 10 dudes than on the 6-foot log alone, trust me. So I'm like, well, I got my own log. I was yelling 0. I can't puss out now. So they do the cadence. They're like 1, 2, 3, right? And I'm like 0. And the cadre's like, I'm gonna tell you right now, you better start counting. I'm like, roger that, sergeant, roger that. 1, 2, 3, I'm like 0. So the rest of the selection, they called me 0. And then after that, I started counting. And I'll tell you, that 6-foot log was heavy, but I wasn't giving in. Like, I got myself here, I'm gonna get myself out of this like a man. And I just kind of manned up, and 0 was gone as soon as SFAS was over. And Shrek really happened after a couple trips to Afghanistan. There's a guy still works in the industry. He was in my troop. He was making fun of me one day, and I forget what I did, but it was one of those things where it was like an incredible feat of retard strength. Like, hey, we need to pick this thing up. I'm like, move it, and you know, and he was like, man, you're like an ogre, you're like Shrek. And everyone laughed, ha ha ha, you're like Shrek. I knew my name was gone. About a week or 2 later, I called a buddy of mine's house, and his youngest son answered, and I'm like, hey, go get your dad. He's like, who's this? And I'm like, it's John, go get your dad. And he's like, who? And I'm like, it's John, go get your dad. Like, I call here all the time, go get your dad. And he's like, who? And I'm like, it's Shrek. And he's like, Daddy, Shrek's on the phone, right? And that's kind of when I knew, like, it's stuck, nothing I can do about it. And, you know, I mean, here's the deal with nicknames. You can fight it, it'll only get worse. So I just kind of embraced it. When I was the money sergeant major, I had a guy that worked for me. And this guy was a retired sergeant major. He was the 82nd Airborne Operations Sergeant Major when he retired. He worked in the embassy as a crisis management guy, and he worked like some crazy stuff, and I don't even remember what it was, but it was like, you know, 5 hours every 3 days, and he was making, you know, he was pulling in $500,000 a year, some crazy number. And the truth is, the embassy in Baghdad during the Iraq war, there's nothing that the embassy's gonna react to because the Army's got a war going on around them. So he really didn't have a job. So he did that for a while. And what he did is he made these t-shirts, and the front had the Sheriff of Baghdad emblem, and the back said Sheriff of Baghdad. Underneath the back it said serving strategic policy, 1 citizen at a time. So he made these while he worked in the embassy, and he thought they were funny, and he was gonna give them out. And no State Department folks wanted them, right? They didn't think it was funny at all. He ended up with all these t-shirts. So A couple years later, his wife says, hey, no more deploying. You got to stay home. We got to raise kids. So he came to work for me. And one day he was like, hey, what size are you? And I was like, yeah, double, triple X, you know? And he was like, I got a bunch of t-shirts. You think you'd want them? I'm like, bring them in. You know, I'll use them for working out, for fighting in, for shooting. So he brought them all in, and they were all these Sheriff of Baghdad shirts. And he had green and brown, yellow letters. So I started wearing them to every pistol match, every 3-gun, every sniper match we went to. I just wore my Sheriff of Baghdad shirts because I had a ton of them. Every time I worked out, every time, you know, every time I did fighting or jujitsu, I just wear my Sheriff of Baghdad t-shirt. And then, you know, guys just kind of got used to it, my buddies. And then one day we're in Raleigh, North Carolina shooting, and 2 of my buddies are the guys that they got to have Starbucks. So we're going to stop shooting so they can go get Starbucks, and then we'll keep shooting again. So I don't drink coffee. So they're like, hey, you know, we're going to go get some coffee. So I'm like, okay. So I go with them, and they're like, you want something to drink? I'm like, I don't drink coffee. Not really. They're like, come on, just get a coffee. Come on, you never get anything. We're buying, get a coffee. So I'm like, all right, dudes, whatever doesn't taste like coffee, I'll get. So they're like, I think I get like a white chocolate mocha or something foo-foo, right? So I'm like, okay, I'll order one. So we just get off the range, you know, North Carolina's open carry, so we got guns and gun belts. And so we walk in, and they're like, yeah, and a white chocolate mocha for the Sheriff of Baghdad. And then my other buddy's like, yeah, throw sprinkles on it. And this girl in Starbucks gives me the dirtiest look. And I'm like thinking to myself, you know, I don't even drink coffee, but this girl's gonna spit in it. I'm sure of it, right? So she comes over, the biggest attitude, like hands me my cup of coffee. So when I retired, you know, you gotta have a corporation, you gotta have a business name, tax purposes. So, you know, I was thinking of a business name, and a buddy of mine was like, dude, every time you wear that Sheriff of Baghdad shirt, he's like, that shit cracks me up. So I was like, man, all right, I'm gonna go with it, Sheriff of Baghdad. So that's the Army, man. Only the Navy gets the cool names.